guys, it's Hannah and I'm here today with my November wrap-up. So my November wrap-up is somewhat short because I kind of took like 2 weeks off of reading-ish. So let's just get on into it. The first book that I tackled this month is actually an audiobook that I flew through, and I will pop a picture up here. It was Finding Audrey, and this one has been on my list for so long. I believe the author was Sophie Kinsella, and it's been, ever since I heard the premise of it, I wanted to read it because I, like, a girl who has social anxiety, is very relatable, and I was so into the idea of it. However, I only rated it a 3 out of 5 stars. This book was so formatted so weird because the story is supposed to be following a girl who has social anxiety, and she has this traumatic event affect her, and it affects her way of being out in public and talking to other people outside of like her family. So she is like being held inside, and she like holds herself inside, and she kind of like hides away from the world, and she has this immense anxiety that you can just feel coming through the pages of how freaked out she is. And what I docked this book for is because we follow a lot of the brother, not necessarily of her, because there's not a lot going on with her because she doesn't have a lot of interaction with other people besides her family. So I get that there's not like a lot of plot line with it if we would have just followed Audrey, but I thought that the whole story, if you look at the overall picture, it really centered around her brother's life, and that kind of annoyed me. Another thing is the romance in this really kind of bugged me, and they do really great points in this with mental health and her going to see a therapist, and her parents are really supportive about what she's going through. By the way, you never find out what happens, and they refer to it constantly in this book, but you never find out what happens, which the whole point is that the story is surrounding around her mental illness, not necessarily around the catalyst that brought on her mental illness. But if, like, it really bothered me that I had to go search and look at reviews while I was reading it, even though I was afraid of spoilers, that I had to look to see if we ever found out. And once I knew that we didn't ever find out, I was okay with it, but it kept bothering me, like, when are we gonna find out? When is it actually gonna tell us? And you don't. You have no idea what set her off. You just know that it's a group of people at school that did this. So that part bugged me, and it, like, for like probably like 100 pages of the book, I was like irked about it that I didn't know what was going on with that. So back to one of the points that I didn't like about this book was the love story. So Linus in this, at one point he says, well, just take off your glasses and you're cured, like you'll be better. And I didn't like that, and I liked that it wasn't like that easy for her to get over her stuff, or like that it didn't like go with that. But I didn't even like that being in here because yes, it shows that people do think that, but they didn't ever correct him in the book. They didn't ever think, like, say, like, that's not how this works. So that really bothered me. So 3 out of 5 stars for Finding Audrey. Next up, I read Rat Queens, and this is the 4th volume. This is all about badass warrior ladies in like a guild, and they're awesome. There is a lot of controversy on this series, but I am not gonna, I've talked about that a few times in videos. I'm just gonna go into directly what this one is about. I rated this one a 3.75 out of 5 stars. I really liked the storyline. I love the characters, so I'm already a little biased with this because I am so in love with the characters from the get-go. However, they did have some change of hands in the art style, which, again, with the controversy, I am totally for the change of hands for the art style. However, I don't prefer this art style as much. It's still good, but it's just not as good as it was before, which kind of kills me. Also with this, because they took a 6-month hiatus because of the controversy surrounding around Rat Queens, that the storyline didn't pick up where it left off, which kind of bothered me because we were going in such a good direction from the last volume, and this volume they've kind of like, they have also skipped ahead time in this one, and so they don't address what the original storyline was going for, which kind of bothered me. And it's like we had all the build up, and then it just like petered out and didn't do anything with that. So I think I'm still gonna pick this up. It's not as good as it once was, but I still really like the characters. I like the development of them, their backstories. I like the whole idea of this story, so I will still be a supporter of Rat Queens, but I'm afraid of the future for this one. Next up this month, I picked up Son of Neptune by Rick Riordan. I rated this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Another one that was just kind of like middle of the road, bothersome for me. Like, unpopular opinion, I'm not the biggest fan of Percy Jackson. I really like Jason and Piper and Leo. I'm not the biggest fan of Percy. I like Annabeth, but Percy, there's just something that doesn't click with me, and I'm not the biggest fan of him. So he is like a main component in this story, so that kind of like dragged me down. But I really like enjoyed the series, so I like that we still got to see like Piper and Leo and Jason, like the ideas behind it, but it was just mainly focusing on Percy Jackson, and that kind of killed it for me. Next up this month, I picked up The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. I rated this a 4 out of 5 stars. This has a very slow start to it, but I really ended up enjoying it. The last like couple hundred pages in this really saved it for me, and I like fully loved it. This is a fantastic story about a girl who is like in a household of psychics, and she is the amplifier of their power. She doesn't really have necessarily psychic abilities until one day when she is amplifying family who lives in the house powers. On an outing, she sees this boy and she knows that he's going to die, and the story kind of takes off from there. And that premise is so like tip of the iceberg of what you get out of this book, and it's great. So you get there's like a fantastic band of characters in this. There is the whole like psychic ability type of thing, and there's like ghosts and things like that are dealt with in here. There's like this also subplot of, or not necessarily subplot, but there's just like another plot with this about the underlying currents, and I'm not doing this justice. It's fantastic. Go check it out. It is slow to start though, so I will warn you of that, but it gets so good, and I love the characters in this and the complexity of it, and it's such a fun ride, and I can't wait to pick up the next one. Next up is one that I'm sure everybody and their mother has read except me, and that is City of Ashes by Cassandra Clare. I rated this a 4 out of 5 stars. I'm enjoying this series a lot more than I did the first time around. I've listened to that on audiobooks, and I'm really enjoying it. This is a story about shadow hunters, and there's werewolves and vampires, and this very evil man trying to take down and have like segregation in the world, and it's very cool, and the world is really well done. The character development is great. There's twists in here that, I mean, I've already have some spoilers in, so it's like kind of predictable, but I think if I didn't know anything about this world, it would be surprising to me. I really enjoyed this series, and it's only getting better from here. Next up, I read Mark of Athena, and everybody said that this was the best one in this series, and I was like went into that, and I think that affects my rating a little bit. I rated it a 3.75 out of 5 stars. I really like the band of characters in here. We have a nice balance. We've got the Percy Annabeth thing going on. We've got the Piper and Leo, and there's like some Nico stuff in here. There's a really good balance of characters in this storyline. I really liked the kind of backstory with Annabeth on this. I really liked that whole aspect of it, but I think I went into this a little too high of expectations, and so it kind of killed it for me. This one took me, I mean, this one is larger, I think. It looks like this one is like double the size of the Son of Neptune, but this one just felt like it was moving so much slower, and there was nothing pulling me back to the story, and I just kept getting bored of this, and I don't know if it's necessarily like a middle grade novel, that it just wasn't like grabbing my attention enough, and I didn't care that much about the characters, but it was just not as good as I was expecting to, which was a bummer. But I did really like the Percy, Jackson, Jason thing and then meeting and their like interactions. That was all great. And lastly, I picked up The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I rated this a 3 out of 5 stars, and again, I went into this one expecting so much and I came out with less than I expected because this one is so highly talked about and it just is not. Guys, if you guys look at this with a critical eye, like I understand the hype around this, I understand why people love this, but if you look at it with a critical eye, I think people would be a little more harsh on it. There's not really a plot in this. Like, there really isn't a strong plot line. The characters aren't really developed. It's got beautiful writing. It's very atmospheric, but it's just not... This book will not be one that will stick with me. And this was hard to get through. It was very slow moving, and I was listening to it on audiobook. That was the only reason why I got through it as fast as I could. It was just... was very subpar from the reviews that I have seen, and I was so surprised that I had this reaction. And then once I started looking for the critical reviews on YouTube of The Night Circus, I found them, but they are drowned in the mounds of rave reviews that you get with this, so kind of controversial opinion on that. This was our book of the month for our book club. Me and Gabby are having a book club, which is Muggle Studies. We also have a Goodreads group, which has been so much fun because I could like talk to them and everybody felt the same way I did, so I felt like I wasn't alone and thinking like, what am I missing from this? I don't get it. So that was our book for our first month, which was November, and then stay tuned for my TBR for our second book, which I'm hoping will be a lot more fun. So that is all for my November wrap up. And let me know down below what you guys thought about some of these books if you read them. I know I've read a lot of popular books this month, so I know a lot of people have opinions. So go ahead and talk to me down below. As always, if I dog on one of your books, your favorite books, don't take that as an attack on you or anything that you like. It's just my personal opinion, and I'm glad that you got something out of these books that I didn't. That is the last thing that I wanted to add into this video. Give it a like if you are excited for our next book club pick, and I will talk to you down below. Thank you guys for watching. Bye!